Adam opened his eyes. His hands were clasped in his lap. He faced a screen filled with line after line of code. He did not recognize the bare cubicle, with nothing more than a desk, a chair, and the screen in front of him. The walls of the cubicle, beige and unremarkable, were tall and topped with a translucent white dome to let diffused light enter from above. Disoriented, Adam reached up and felt two smooth surfaces encompassing the back of his scalp. A third bisected the top of his head and ended in a round circle on his hairline. The arms met in a fourth circle under his skull's occipital bump. This was his cube at the Lightcap project. Adam was sure of it. He turned to look at the code on the computer screen, but it was jumbled, washed out by a glow seeming to emanate from everything around him. This must be a dream, Adam thought. He noticed a squiggled line added to the ones already on the screen. That's interesting, he thought, and another line appeared. Adam suddenly heard cries of desperation, sounding far off and muffled like the screams of a jet engine passed through several thick walls. He slid open the opaque door separating them from the larger room and stepped into a row of a cube form, each cubicle like the last, their bubbled tops giving the appearance of a room full of eggs and a large open carton. Adam walked down the walled row. "Hello?" he called out to the seemingly empty area. The word died shortly after it left his mouth, absorbed by the beige carpet lining the cubicle exterior walls. He pulled open the doors of several cubes to find each one empty, save for the same types of desk, screen, and chair that had been in his own. Adam heard another cry, clearer and filled with pain rather than the desperate anger of the last one. The sound of shuffled feet truncated with a dull thud followed, coming from one of the cubes. Adam raced to throw open door after door, finding nothing behind them but the desks, chairs, and screens displaying the same blurred chunk of code he had seen in his office. Adam made it to the last row of cubicles, where the first door he opened revealed a man slumped against the floor, Lightcap lying next to him. Adam turned the man over and discovered with horror the face of Damon Theta. Dark red blood flowed from his nose and mixed with a milky fluid from his ears. Damon, still alive, shook slightly. More blood slid down the side of his face with each blink of his unfocused eyes. "Help! I need help!" shouted Adam, the sound of his voice muted against the enclosed walls of corporate solitude. Adam heard rushed footsteps and the sound of heavy boots on thin carpet as two men rounded the corner. Two men. Blues, uniformed with batons dangling from their hips, hands readied on the holsters of their pistols. One rushed to Damon, the other to Adam. The man tending to Adam pulled him from the cubicle and spun him in a circle. As his eyes flicked to the Lightcap, a look of relief spread across his face. The other man, the one with Damon, said, "This one woke up. His device is off." Adam turned at the sound of the voice and watched, unable to intervene, as the blue drew his revolver and pointed it at Damon's forehead, its barrel resting where the Lightcap's front bubble usually lay. Pop! Adam jolted awake. His bedsheet stuck to his chest with warm sweat. He clutched it as hard as tears formed in the corner of his eyes. He shook his head and tried to convince himself it was only a dream, even as he felt that what he had just experienced had the distinct footprint of a memory, similar to a long-forgotten moment from childhood brought back into hazy recollection by a smell or sound. He jumped out of bed, making it to the bathroom just as his stomach expelled his dinner and scotch in fetid chunks against toilet water, like gravel thrown repeatedly into a deep puddle. The cement floor of his bathroom was cold and rough under his hand. Adam pressed the back of his head flat against the textured gray wall. His chest heaved with breath caught in choked gasps as he wept. Arya and Dej were right. Adam sat this way until his senses returned and the throbbing at his temples subsided. At some point, he pushed off from the floor and got to his feet, livid and filled with thoughts of righteous retribution. He would find those responsible and bring them to justice. He would slay entire legions of men with his bare hands if necessary, if it would avenge the young man who had died while under his charge. But first, he needed proof there had been a crime. And so after that, he does. Thank you. Yeah. That's done with the read part.
No, I was really into it. Sorry.
After that, he basically does like the first real wrong thing in his life. He goes and he breaks into this guy's apartment that disappeared, looking for clues as to what happened. He finds nothing. For the most part, he finds an almost completely empty apartment with the exception of a toothbrush in the medicine cabinet and some writing under the windowsill that says MS equals no enemy. And that's it. He goes home, not really sure what any of those things mean, and He does find out eventually, though, so, but you'll have to read the book for that part. I'm going to read one last section, and then I'll take some questions if you guys have any questions about the world or like the technology in the book or anything. But so toward the end of the book, they have to rescue somebody. Don't worry about the people's names at this point. One of the things that I like about this scene is just kind of like the back and forth dialogue. The main character in the book is reflective of me in some ways and not others. Like, he's skinny and tall, so that's one way that he's not reflective of me. But he's a klutz, so that's one way that he is reflective of me. Yeah, and he's a big nerd. That's another way too. So, but so he's a real big klutz. So they're getting ready to go on this like rescue mission, and one of the people has like a sword, and like one of the other people has a gun, and he's like, "Hey man, you can't give me a sword or a gun. Like, I'm gonna shoot myself or cut my own head off. Like that's not gonna work well." And so I just like this exchange. So like I said, don't worry too much about the names. And this is toward the end of the book. This is right before like the big, storming the castle, so to speak. Will we have weapons? Adam asked. Arya seemed set, but I'd be just as likely to cut off my own head with something like a sword. Anything that's a little more foolproof, like a gun or something? Pavel burst into laughter. His stomach bounced against his legs and his chair swung back and forth as if he were saying no with his entire body, not just his head. When his laughter subsided, he said, "Guns? If we had tried to get guns, the Blues would have already knocked down the front door. I am going to bring a small pistol, a .38 Special 2-shot Derringer. It belonged to my father, and I've never had a chance to use it. Ammunition is so scarce these days, I've never even fired the thing. The bullets have been in the chamber for almost 20 years now. Hopefully it still fires each other. I'm too damn old to swing a sword or get into a fist fight." "For you," Pavel continued, pointing at Adam, "I'm going to give you the device Dej has been working on. It has one button, which accomplishes two things when pressed. It sends a command inducing panic in anyone wearing a light cap within a 50-foot radius. Then it kills the radio, so no further commands can be received. It requires a substantial amount of power, so you only get to press that button twice, and then it's worthless without a recharge. Try not to use it unless absolutely necessary." Pavel reached into a drawer next to his chair and pulled out a box, wide and short. He opened it and said, "I also got one of these for each of us. Ballistic vests made from woven nanotubes. Strong, lightweight. They'll provide protection to your torso from projectiles and bladed weapons, but they'll still hurt like hell, so don't get shot or stabbed." He pulled the vests out of the box and handed them over. "Since I'll have my gun and Arya will have her sword, you can take these," he said. He handed Adam a small box roughly the same size as his palm. Adam opened it to find electro-dusters. Pavel saw Adam's surprise and said, "You wanted something you couldn't klutz up? This is it. Just put them on and punch. They deliver over 900,000 volts as soon as they hit skin. Doesn't get much easier than that. They hard code to the wearer's DNA, so you can't zap yourself. The part that makes contact when you punch is a platinum tungsten alloy. Even without the shock, it still won't feel great. Try not to hurt yourself. To be honest, if any of us gets to the point of needing to rely on these weapons, it's probably already over." And they do have to rely on the weapons, and I won't say whether or not it's over at that point. So, and those are a real product too. So it's funny. I one of those things where like you have an idea for something and then you look it up and it already exists. It's kind of cool if you're a writer, maybe not if you're an inventor. That would probably suck. But so I had this idea of like what would be like a cool like kind of futuristic weapon that my main character would use that has almost zero potential of messing himself up. And so I decided, well, gosh, something that delivers a lot of electricity, and it somehow hard codes to like DNA or like I don't even know, like fingerprint recognition or something where you just can't hurt yourself, right? And so I settled on DNA. And what they are is they're brass knuckles that you just punch people and they zap the crap out of them. And it was fun to write too.
Brass knuckle tasers.
Yeah, well they make them. If you go to Google and if you type in like brass knuckle taser, it's not quite as what it's described in the book. It's the ones in real life are actually made of plastic, and they just have a tiny little thing here in the middle that you have to make contact with. And when you make contact, that delivers it. The ones in this book, the entire front plate, and I mean, there's actually a scene in this kind of final confrontation where the main character goes to punch, and he's not a very coordinated guy. He kind of misses, and he just gets like a glancing blow. But that skin contact, even though there's no real force in his punch, it's enough that it said the guy. I mean, you might as well uppercut him or something. His head gets knocked back, and there's like a loud crack, and you know, the guy's down for the count. So I mean, it's a pretty powerful weapon. The problem is that, you know, they've got guns and he's got, hey, let me punch you. So I mean, there's a little bit of a disparity there, to say the least.